Hi, everyone. Ooh,
Oh,
ooh, ooh.
Good evening, everyone. We are so excited. Welcome, Natasha.
thank you guys.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another, we would normally say episode, but it's not an episode. So, welcome to another gathering with the Cheeky Natives. Welcome to
Yes.
everyone who's watching us live on Facebook, everyone who's watching us live on YouTube, and everyone who's watching us live on Twitter. We are really, really excited. And we were talking earlier about the idea of like how the internet and the pandemic, in many ways, have opened us up as creatives to begin to think about how we can be in connection with each other across the interweb, right? Ordinarily, if this was not the pandemic, we would not have imagined that we'd be in conversation with Natasha. But now, because it's the pandemic, we're like, wait, maybe we can try alternative means. And voila, we are here talking about this book. And Natasha's here, so we're hanging out virtually.
Hi guys. Hi there from Honolo and hi Alma. Miss Alma. Al.
Alice fine. Alice fine.
You.
Sure. So I have the pleasure of introducing our guest tonight. I'm just going to read her blurb shortly. Natasha Omokhodion-Kalulu Banda is a UK-born Zambian of Nigerian and Jamaican heritage who now lives in Lusaka. She's married and has 3 children and has been published in the African Women Writers e-publication anthology and featured on africanwriters.com for her story To Hair is Human, To Forgive is Design. She's been published in Short Story Day Africa, and the manuscript for her novel No Bee From Here was selected as a Grey Wolf Africa Prize finalist in 2019. Welcome, Natasha. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. It's been such a long journey, right? We've been trying to see each other and all kinds of things got in the way. So it is just fantastic to be here with you today. Thank you.
No devil formed against us shall prosper. Can I get an amen from the church? Amen.
Amen. Amen. I mean, I think the most exciting bit about this is that when we initially were having discussion about this conversation, we didn't know how we would connect because there wasn't a South African publisher and a South African distributor. And then because, the literary gods are like, y'all deserve all things that you ask for, Blackbird Books showed up. So shout out to Blackbird Books.
Yeah.
Runaway title. And because of Blackbird Books, we're able to have this wonderful, wonderful conversation. So shout out to Tabisa and her team.
Absolutely. And they're such a wonderful team. They've really been like orchestrating everything. Sam, hey Sam, I hope you're there. So thank you.
I also wanted to say the wonderful things about this is that you as the audience can also participate in the conversation. We'll be able to share your conversations live. And if you have any questions for Natasha, we'll also be able to ask Natasha these questions or post them to her so she can answer. So please engage with us. Just say like a little bit of a hello or share your favorite moments of the book with us, or even share excitement about reading the book after this conversation. Because we certainly know that after you hear us speak about this book, you will be rushing to a bookstore to get yourself a copy of this if you haven't yet.
So before we begin, we just want to give you a taste of how amazing this book is and why you need to get yourself a copy. So can we please ask Natasha to just read from the book, just to give our readers a sense of what awaits them when they get themselves a copy of No Bee From Here.
Okay. So No Bee From Here is a family story that goes through multiple generations and is told from the point of view of 2 girls who are trying to reunite this family that was disbanded many years ago, and but they can't because they don't know why the family is so fragmented. So I'm just going to read from the story is told from the grandmother Margaret. We sort of get snippets of her life and what happened and what led the demise of her demise, and eventually led to all the pain and hurt and secrets that exist in this family. And then we follow the 2 girls who are now in this generation. We follow them through the 90s, and they are Bupe and Maggie. So I'm going to read from Bupe's perspective. It's set in London in 1991, and Bupe her father is the Zambian father, so he's the one connected to Grandmother Margaret, and he's the brother to Maggie's mother. So Maggie is her cousin. So the stories of Bupe and Maggie. So I'm going to read a snippet from Bupe. Went to London in 1991. I've always wanted a little sister, but I stopped asking for one when I turned 7. I'm now 9. Nana says I have a cousin on my dad's side who used to live here, but now lives in Lusaka. That's all the way in Banda, in Africa, where my dad comes from. Her mom is my dad's little sister, who married Daddy's best friend, Uncle Abisola Ayomide. Daddy does not like to speak about it one bit, but Mom makes him. She said it's not my fault what happened between him and Auntie Stella, so he shouldn't punish me for it. Mom gave me a picture of my cousin Maggie after I asked nicely. She let me stick it up on my wall. I'm supposed to look after it because it's the only one we have of her. I sit with Maggie sometimes. I pull out my dollhouse and set our teacups so we can talk about all the fun stuff we do if we were together. I ask her with my pinky in the air, how was your day today, Cousin Maggie? Did you see any zebra on your way from school? She stares back at me, wedged between her unsmiling mom and dad, sitting on an ivory couch. They have matching Christmas jumpers, burgundy and green. I laugh like a grown-up, like Mom does when Dad whispers something in her ear. I slap my thigh and say, Maggie, you're so funny. Hilarious you are. Would you like to read something from Enid Blyton with me? And I read aloud to her, pausing every now and then to ask her how she thinks Felicity and Dara will do at school this term. They're sisters too, you know. I can't wait to meet you. You're the best sister in the whole world. Nana comes in to switch off my lights, and I go to sleep happy. Dad is lucky. He has one more sibling, my Uncle Cavasso, the baby. He pops in every now and then. When he does, Daddy turns into a real worrywart. He fusses over him, making sure he's eaten, got enough pocket money, slept comfortably. I know for a fact that if he could chew his rice in peace for him, he would. They sit up all night playing songs from a long time ago and whispering at the fireplace until it's time for him to leave again. Every time Uncle Cavasso leaves, Daddy mopes, sad and gloomy, muttering to the grandma in the picture frame. He's so long that he spills out of his old armchair. Everything about my dad is long. His face, his dark eyelashes, his fingers. Everything. He wears a V-neck sweater over everything, and when he takes it off, it's tied around his shoulders. My mother has one rival for my father's affection, his box of stamps and maps. He handles them with the same concentration Mom has when she's planning a rally. He takes them out of a lockable drawer and lays them in careful order along the coffee table. He examines them with his magnifying glass, standing in low in before pulling back for a wider view. He grunts most of the time. Every now and then he bursts out laughing, rubbing his hands together in glee. He retraces the border of Zambia and his tongue sticks out slightly. Do you know that we come from Zambia? He asks. I nod my head. That's where Cousin Maggie is. Yes, Cousin Maggie is there with your Aunt Stella. But let's talk about Zambia, okay? It was Northern Rhodesia when I was born. He pauses, then presses on. Your grandfather was instrumental in fighting for independence from Britain. And so was your grandfather because she took care of the family while he faced danger in the name of country. You come from brave blood, I'm afraid. There's sadness in his eyes. Shouldn't that make you proud, Dad? I grip his index finger. Happy? I scrunch my nose. But he turns his attention back to his map. Look at Chinsali. He hands me the heavy magnifying glass. See how far it is from Lusaka, our capital city? It's almost 1,000 kilometers away from there, with no electricity, no running water, not much at all. well, except a mission built by the Church of Scotland. And still, it's managed to produce a large stock of freedom fighters. By Jove, it's incredible. Can we go there, Daddy, please? He never answers this question. He looks forlorn as he glances at the smiling grandma in the photograph. Instead, he asks me to play Tiende Pamoti for him on the old oak piano. It calms him. He sits next to me and his long fingers join mine, so we play in tandem. Grandmother Margaret smiles on us, and my imagination takes me far away to a land of sunshine and supersized animals hidden in tall golden grass. Freedom fighters whispering secret codes to each other in the heart of the forest, deep inside the belly of the mountains. Fish eagles circling wide open skies, cutting through cotton white tufts of clouds. My heart takes me to a cousin that I so sorely would love to know.
Tatung, can we talk about Natasha's writing? Even me, I'm like now in London. I also want to know. I want to know more. I want to know more.
I want
Natasha,
to go to Chinsali. I am so like ready to go to Chinsali. I'm ready.
Sam on YouTube says, Natasha, you're so stunning. And I just wanted to lift that up because, yes, they're correct. You're absolutely stunning. And then someone is recognizing, they're like, headgear guys. Yes, we were intentional about tonight.
Oh, yes, we were. Thanks to Elle, he orchestrated.
I wanted to spend a moment to think about the protagonist in the story, right? So frontally, there are two protagonists. We have Bupe and we have Maggie. And these are, essentially young women growing up and coming of age, but both of them in many ways and in different parts in the story are dealing with a form of identity. But it also feels like a displacement of sorts, right? Whether it be in a familial sense, but also in nation building sense. Because in the passage you've just read to us, there's the uncle refers to Bupe and says, we come from Zambia. So we already see that form of displacement. And I wanted to speak a little bit about why it was important for you to cover the theme of identity closely connected with displacement.
Okay. So for me, it was a very personal decision because, as you read in my little bio, I come from Zambia, Nigeria, Jamaica, and started out in England. And growing up, it was always, what's the word? Different fragments, and you sort of have to adjust yourself in each scenario or each other place you come from. So writing this book was my own way of telling the story of a child who comes from, a diverse sort of, diverse heritage, so to speak. And also what they could kind of go through as they go through life, trying to marry what home means, where their identity truly lies, in the end. So it really did come from a very personal place. It was inspired by my own story. And therefore, it led to the creation of Maggie Bupe and the more senior generation as we come to know them.
Speaking about the most... Sorry, Natasha.
No, but I was saying with regards to displacement, in my particular scenario, I also came from a family which was from different places. And when we had to separate, it also meant a geographical separation. So writing this book was a way of exploring, having gone through that, using fiction. So, yeah.
Speaking of that exploration of the older generation, there are multiple family fractures which take place in the book, right? That you explore, and I guess you really explore also the idea of what it means for a family to break, but also the ways in which they come together post that breaking. And I'm really interested in, excuse me, in why you wanted to write familial relationships in the way that you did, and what you hope that your reader would take from that exploration of family and what it means for family to come together after this big tragedy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I'm trying not to give any spoilers, but still answer your questions. The book is about family. It is about multiple generations as much as it is about the future. I know the book sort of leaves you questions about the future, but the whole point is to explore where we're coming from generationally and how things that have happened generations before don't necessarily just, vanish. They tend to reverberate through multiple generations thereafter. And in this particular case, we start with the demise of the matriarch, the grandmother, and how that unresolved issue causes such a fracture in the family that fracture reverberates right until the end, right until we have the resolution. So it is a family story. It is about how families, I would say these guys are a contemporary mirror of what the journey Africa has gone through and what the new generation have now, the new challenges we have, but also how they're related to where we are coming from. So that's the easiest way, or the best, most effective way, rather, I should say, was to show that through the relationships within the family, and to show that because what was not resolved in 1967 was allowed to keep through, it still was there with these girls who are here in 2017.
There's an interesting question here about which character was the hardest to write and why?
Woo! I have never been asked that, so thank you for asking. Who was the hardest to write? I will say initially I didn't want to write Bupe, only because I'm not a Jamaican girl in Brixton, so I didn't want to have to write another, if that makes sense. Even though my grandmother's Jamaican didn't give me a right to write her. So I thought about it long and hard before I did. But her being half Zambian kind of was like, okay, cool. I think I can write in relation to that. So building her was great, but I really had to think about the why I'm doing it and to make sure that I don't create some kind of trope that is negative. You know what I mean? So I think I did put quite some thoughts into each of them, but coming up with Bupe was quite it took some time. But when I did find her, like I said earlier, I could hear her, especially as young Bupe. She was so clear. As soon as I started reading her, I could hear exactly what she sounds like. So it was interesting. And thank you for that question.
I think another really important theme that you explore in the book is intimacy, and intimacy in the familial sense, but intimacy also in the romantic sense. And I wanted to know, what are some of the commentaries you wanted to say? Because it seems that in this story, like in the way that we understand intimacy, it's not always clear cut. There is a little bit push and pull, right, in this intimacy. And what were you trying to get at by writing about intimate relationships in a familial sense, but also intimate relationships in a romantic sense?
I was trying to show that intimacy in our context is not necessarily what it looks like in the West, first of all. Generationally as well, you could have a Stella or Stella's mother, who their version of intimacy is, let's get on with it. Let's, you survive, you keep going, you keep the home together and you move on. It's not necessarily kissing you on the cheek or stroking your arm. I think I was trying to show that there are varying ways of the way we express intimacy, but also that intimacy is exchanged very differently, even between generations. So, yeah.
Speaking of that exchange between generations, I think that there is a theme of spirituality that I'd like us to just explore. So there are religious references throughout the book, and I think that there's a particular reference. I don't want to give away too much of the book because I want everybody to go get this book straight after this conversation. But there is a biblical reference that stands out when you think of Maggie thinking about her familial situation, right? And what she feels like she's lost or she's lacking. But there seems to be this theme of spirituality that carries on throughout the book. And I mean, I think of how Grandmother Margaret writes. So Grandmother Margaret is an ancestor, but there is this role of the ancestor that still comes through and permeates in so much of their lives. So it speaks to how they interact with each other, but it also speaks to certain situations that you see them encounter that you feel like, okay, Grandmother Margaret was maybe looking out for one of them here, or whatever the story may be. And so I'm really interested in the theme of spirituality, I mean, from the religious references, but also from the point of Grandmother Margaret and her influence as an ancestor, I suppose, in this context.
Yeah. As I say, Grandmother Margaret, for me, is the matriarch, even though the girls never have the privilege of meeting her. Because of course she died way before they come. I think there is a spirituality in continuity, in being a descendant of, and creating Margaret, Grandmother Margaret, and what she went through. And as you say, she kind of never leaves, right? She's always there. Whether it's Bupe in the living room wondering why her dad is always so sad, or whether Maggie later on, sort of thinks she sees her sometimes, and just the presence of her, like, so she may have died years ago, but her presence sort of just never leaves them. And I think, in Bantu culture, it's so dynamic that for us, it's not like you buried the dead and they're gone. It's a lot more dynamic than that. It's a lot more fluid. So it was important to create Margaret, even though she's Grandmother Margaret, she's died in 1967, to show that she still exists and sort of has a hand and is like a guardian angel in some ways, to both the girls. And that the reason for her death is still so important to these girls, even 30 years later. So just to show, the continuity and love, intimacy, even though someone is not physically there. The fact that they once were and that you're a descendant of them, that it continues. So, yeah, it's a love story between generations.
I suppose the other thing is, people often ask writers who was the most difficult character to write and why, but we never ask, like, who was pleasurable to write and why was that person pleasurable? So when you set out to write the book, there must have been a persistent person who was hanging out with you in order to create the story. Who was that person and why did you enjoy them so much?
It was definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, it was Grandmother Margaret. It was really Grandmother Margaret. Why, I'm not sure, but if I sort of go back mentally, I think when I first got up to write this story, of course it was nowhere near what the book we have now, but the first time I was, it was a Saturday afternoon, I remember very clearly, and I was jolted from my sleep. And I got up and I just had a sudden, incessant need to find out more about the eras from which my grandparents were from. And I think that I mean each of them. And I think for the next few months, that's all I did. I was just researching the times that they were there. And it just, I don't know why, for some reason you just, your grandparents are there, but you don't really question that much, But I went deep. I did a lot more research into the times that they were there. And Grandmother Margaret just kept coming for me. She was like, she was clear. Like the first scene in the prologue, for those of you who haven't read it, if you go and get it, please remember what I'm saying now. That first scene came to me as clear as day, and I went and wrote it first and then put it away. And everything else happened much later. So writing her was quite an experience, but also when I wrote this book, on one hand, I'm saying I sort of went back into the eras from which my grandparents were from, and when they are, from the freedom fighting days in Northern Rhodesia. On my dad's side, I've got a Windrush grandmother who moved from Jamaica to England in the 50s. I've got a grandfather from Nigeria who also moved in the 50s. So I was really consumed by what it was like to be there in that time, just post-colonialization, either you're moving to England. If you're not moving to England, you're here fighting England. I was consumed by it. And so writing Grandmother Margaret was, for me, fun. It was a place of release because I had spent so much time immersed in this era. But I still wanted the story to be contemporary and something to date. So even though it feels like you only get snippets of her, I really had to go somewhere much further to find her. So I love writing Grandmother Margaret.
So there's a question here about what lessons have you learned about writing and getting published that you wish you had known beforehand?
I have to laugh first because it's such a long journey. Wow, it's quite a journey. I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was beforehand, because maybe then I wouldn't have written. Now that I do, I would say it's a really steep learning curve, but the love of the story, like for me, the love of the characters just were with me. They needed to come. I felt compelled to write. I think that's what I should say. I felt compelled to write this story. So even if I was a little scared, a little anxious, I mean, I didn't have a publisher, I didn't have an agent or anything like that. The story itself wanted to be told. So I obeyed and wrote without expectation. And when I first put it up, I think when I first sent it out, as you see, so it was a Grey Wolf finalist. And then later on, it was almost picked up by another publisher. But right towards the end, they said no. And their reasons were really primarily editorial. But what it did was they came back with a lot of feedback that I took my manuscript back, and I actually just tore it apart and started again and did it. And by the time I was done, and I'd gone through beta readers, sensitivity readers, I had to share it with quite a few people. I do believe writing a book is also a collaboration. Yeah. So by the time I reached the point that I said, okay, I think we've got something. It really had been quite a journey, a lot of collaborations, really good eyes. People were generous to spend their time and look at it. And I published in Zambia under my label, Papa Monstera, not knowing what would happen. But I also didn't mind. I said, look, if I sell 4 copies, that's fine. But this story needed to be told, so it's okay. But Zambia was very kind to me. The readers at home were fantastic. They were really, really fantastic. And they pushed it. They pushed the book. They shared the book. They read the book. And it was amazing to see that, okay, which was the point? It was to connect. It was to share a story that, like I said, wanted to be out there. So later on, when I did meet, I'm sorry about that. When I did meet,
sorry, we're just having some, yeah, we can still see Natasha, but we're just holding, maybe the lights will come back on.
Okay. But
I see James has a question. Yeah.
I see, but I think we've also asked S. Mwamba's question, where they asked if the book is available in the UK. I said
in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll just confirm with Natasha. Maybe there are other ways to get the book.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, while we wait, Alma, let me ask you, who was your favorite character in the book?
Sure. Okay, you guys have already hated on one of my favorite characters. But Maggie, I absolutely loved Maggie. I think that Maggie was complex, but Maggie also represents, I guess, so many of us, that desire for belonging, for family. I enjoyed Maggie, and I also think that Maggie was the kind of person who could bring out the best in people. I mean, just what she was able to bring out in Bupe was amazing. But also Maggie is somebody who's working at love, and I enjoyed Maggie. Why,
Hey,
hello.
Welcome back.
Hi, guys.
Can you hear us?
I can't hear you.
Okay. Try going off and coming back again.
Sorry, can I come back?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So we're just.
Your favorite character? They're all complex, right? They're all
They
really
are, they are. Like I said, right, when we recorded the podcast earlier, I think Uncle Kabusole, what's Uncle Kabiso? Yes, Kabaso. I wanted more, right? Because I feel like oftentimes when we write about queer characters, they sort of are not, and I know the story is not about him, but like what role he played, what are some of his struggles. I really would have liked it to know more about him. But I really did like Maggie. I liked Maggie and Bupe's relationship when they
Yes.
came together. I like the
Mm.
fact that they like the sisterhood that they were longing for most of their lives, they were able to forge for each other, and how that, sort of walked through up until the end and up until they were grown up, right? So I really enjoyed that, right? My least favorite character, obviously, is Abosole, because what a
It's a
trash.
tie. It's a tie for me between Abisola and Jerome. I think that
Oh, Jerome.
trashy represents really just like the type of person who will hold you back and just drag you down with them. It's like this commitment to just being dysfunctional, right? It's like Jerome is just committed to being problematic and just dysfunctional, and I just could not stand Jerome, right? I just could not. But also Jerome is like low-key, high-key, anti-black. Anti-black.
I also think that, in many ways, Jerome was displaced, right?
Yes, of course.
Jerome also came from a very dysfunctional family. And, like, Jerome is just like, it's a lot, but like, there is no reason for Jerome to have been trashy in the way that Jerome was
And
trashy.
to have been cruel. I think that Jerome was often bordering on just cruel. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I liked Stella in a limited sense, right? I felt that for all that Stella had been through, that girl held on, man, held on to life.
I liked Charles Senior. I think that Charles Senior. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I am close to my grandparents now. I've always seen
That is definitely biased, but go on.
But I think that the relationship between grandchildren and their grandparents, in many ways, sometimes offers redemption and like healing for those familial relationships. So where parents have had to be authoritarian and very disciplinarians and like strict, I think that the relationship with their grandparents often offers tenderness and softness, and grandchildren get to see different sides of their grandparents.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Sorry,
Yay.
No
load shedding will formed against us will prosper. There was a question from James. James wanted to know, what does Blackbird signing the book mean for it?
Wow. So Blackbird signing book, I was actually saying just before we got cut off that I was fortunate enough for the title got spotted by Blackbird Books by Tabiso. Before that, I was doing everything by myself. So my readership was limited geographically to home. But once Blackbird signed, it opens up. It means I'm talking to you guys now, and you can run down the road and get it. And hopefully it means we can get into more territories, in the future. So it's really, and it also just means it was validated. Like I said, I didn't have any validation. It was just sort of like, look, the story needs to be done. So it's very great to have new publishers like Blackbird who are looking to expand into Africa and connect more voices across the continent.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. So one of the questions that was asked earlier is the book available in the UK?
So the book was available in the UK, but right now we are in the middle of seeing whether it can be taken up there, if you know what I mean. If rights can be brought up there. So no, not at the moment. I'm so sorry, but no.
So we were
available, right? Sorry. Is the ebook available like on Amazon?
Not anymore. Okay. It was before signing with Blackbird, but not at the moment. So
people have to contact Blackbird and we'll DHL it to them.
Yes, definitely. We were trash talking characters while you were gone.
I missed the tea.
So we were talking about like the characters that we were uncomfortable with, right, and the characters that we didn't like,
Okay.
and who are the characters that you didn't like in the book?
Oh man, I don't think I didn't like anybody, to be fair.
Not even Jerome.
Abisola.
No, I think I kind of understand why they do what they do, even if it's not cool. You know what I'm saying? So no, I mean they're all my babies. I can't. It's like, you know, saying who's your favorite one and who's your worst one. No, I don't agree with what they do, but I think I get their motivations for why they act the way they act, or, you know, whether they're stunted in their relationships or why they can't give all of themselves. So yeah.
This is interesting, right? So when does
What is Abisola, or is it Jerome?
all of them trashy?
What about Fabiola?
No, I didn't. I thought that Fabiola was shady in some of her behavior. But I also think that Fabiola, it's actually, I think it's a bit too easy to dislike Fabiola, right? I think so much of that is also societal conditioning, that you dislike women like Fabiola because you want to also put all of your like morality on those kinds of women, in ways that you wouldn't hold, I guess, Charles to that standard, right? Charles Senior, or you wouldn't hold a Jerome or an Abisola to that kind of moral standard. So I liked Fabiola because I think that she was just a challenge to me. Like, how much of your feminist unlearning have you done? I actually have a question about the title, because I think that the title is also so interesting just because of the passage that it gets referred to in the book, but we don't want to give away too much. But can you tell us a little bit about the title? No Beef from Here is quite striking.
So No Beef from Here in Nigerian Pidgin means foreigner, or someone who's not from here, like it says. And I had a friend, I had a lot of friends who were helping me with a lot of translations that you see in the book, whether it's in Patois or in Jamaican, Nigerian Pidgin. And I remember, you know, about 80% into the book, writing the scene where Maggie is in Lagos in the market. And I had asked a friend of I call him my Lagos informer, I asked him how to say in Pidgin, someone is not from here. And he just wrote me back. He's like, no, you know, be from here. I was like, what? And he said it again. And as soon as he said it, I was like, that is the title. That is the one. That's where we're going. So yeah, there is a chapter much later in the story where you do finally get, and I felt like it just was the crux of the whole story. It just sort of summarized everything in just those 3 words. So it made a perfect title, and that's how we arrived there.
I think to give our listeners or our watchers a little bit of incentive, because of the wonderful Cheekinators, we always love to give away books. Like, we love giving away books. So tonight, we will give away 2 books of No Beef from Here. And we're still going to think about what questions to ask for the winning participants. So, like, you know, get your fingers ready in order to type fast, because, you know, first come, first serve. But I wanted to ask you this question, Natasha. You published a number of short stories, right? Most recently, you've published a short story in the Duk magazine. What is the difference between the form of a short story collection and this longer form of a novel? And why did you, at your debut, choose to do a novel instead of a short story collection?
Wow. Well, first of all, I used to write short stories because I thought that's all I could do. I actually didn't think I would be able to write a whole novel once. I actually thought, I remember having this conversation and saying, no, I do shorts and I'm cool. But going journey is definitely a much longer commitment. It's it lives with you. It's with you everywhere you go. You're constantly thinking about it. There's always something you'll make inference to. Some things only fall into place much later. The story doesn't necessarily come at once. You know, it takes time, and it's okay to let it take its time. With shorts, I take time with shorts as well, though. You know, I'll sort of like make the bare bones, but it also takes its time to come in full. You know, but it's funny now. I find it harder to write a short. And if I'm starting something, I'm thinking about it for the long haul. I'm thinking about it like a novel. So I'm trying to see which way we're going to go in all this. But definitely, I feel like it's very addictive. I'm ready to write again. And yeah, so
We're ready to read again. We're ready to read again.
yay, thank you.
There's a question here about who is your favorite author, which is quite a difficult question. So good luck.
Very, very
Like, who's your
yeah.
favorite child, basically?
My favorite author as an adult. I'll be very honest. My classics that sit for me still remain Half of a Yellow Sun. I know everyone will be like, okay, that's everyone's answer, but really, I love her form and her voice. Homegoing for me was one of my recent. When I say recent, a few years ago, I really did enjoy the unique structure of Homegoing and how she just rolled that all out. With all the smaller threads that leads to the large thread. I think it was a weird, very, very large amount of information that she managed to compact and still deliver the drama, still make it about characters. This year, I've actually enjoyed the death of Vivek Oji this year. I love.
Yes.
I love the lyricism. He really meanders. I like the way he takes you. Well, they take you on a journey. The Vanishing Half. I've read a lot this year, but
The Vanishing Half. The Vanishing Half.
Stay tuned for our podcast with her. It was absolutely amazing.
I can only imagine.
I completely love Britt Spinet's work. I think she is just a brilliant writer. I think if you haven't read The Mothers as well, it is an excellent place to start. It's like an excellent introduction to Britt.
And of course, I cannot finish this without mentioning The Shadow King, because this year The Shadow King for me was just like, whoa. I was like, this woman.
We're waiting for Thursday. We're waiting for Thursday. She better win that Booker.
Poetic.
Y'all are fasting and praying. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So look, I have lots of favorites. I'm reading The Confessions of Franny Langton at the moment, and she's such an intense character that I feel like she's living with me. It's like now she's watching me. I'm not reading her. So I think there's amazing work being done out there, and it's just great to see, in all its forms and fashions, just to see what's coming out.
You mentioned something earlier about how you didn't have a character that you disliked intensely, because you understood a lot of their motivations, right? And I'm always curious about where the art meets real life. So have you found that in writing these very complex, unlikable characters, it's made you somewhat more empathetic to some of the complex, unlikable characters in your own life? Has it changed the ways in which you view people that you ordinarily may have just had a little bit less grace and empathy for?
Absolutely, 100%. Definitely. I think that is one of the biggest take-homes from writing and spending time with characters. I definitely feel a lot less judgmental than I used to before. So it's interesting that you bring that up. Because you do. I mean, you sort of have to look and say, okay, but why? What's the why? Or why would someone want something so much? What motivates them? What wakes them up every day? What makes them do what they do? So yeah, I think so. I think you have to empathize to be able to spend so much time with a character and bring them to life.
Another question here is, good question about the short stories. Should we expect a collection?
Well, one day maybe, but to be honest, I've now gone towards the novel route. I think I'm enjoying building them and creating them and shaping them into, the product you see today, because it's nowhere near what it was 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, I think I would probably write novels more. But it would be great to do a short story collection. I'd also like to publish other voices in my country. I'd like to publish younger, upcoming voices and create anthologies from the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I often think about we've got Kenyan noir, Lagos noir, Nairobi noir, Joburg noir, and thinking about a Lusaka noir, right? Like just thinking about writing from a Lusaka perspective. Because I mean, the three writers I've sort of discovered from Zambia have been absolutely amazing, right? I'm just like, I want more because I'm so interested. I remember when I read The Morning Bird, I was like,
Name them
oh
for
my
our
God, like, I want to just discover what's happening. And then we went to the old drift, and I'm like, I want to know more. I want to know more. So I'm so grateful that like you want to take up that work, because I think that there are often places where we don't think stories can be told, but we know that stories will be told.
Yeah,
name
thank you.
the authors. Give people
Oh,
their
Nomwali, Nomwali is the old
Manga,
script, and then The Morning Bird is written by Mubanga. Yes.
Kalimamo Cuento, yes.
So we want to give away our first book. Dr. A will ask our first question. So if you fast on the keys, we will make it happen.
Okay, so the question is, what literary prize was No Be From Here shortlisted for in 2019? This book was a finalist for a literary prize.
Yeah.
And
So
go.
we're watching. So as we waiting for an answer, Teresa says, writing diverse characters makes you realize bad is subjective.
That is true. That is
So we
very
just like, if you want to win this, and this cover is absolutely stunning. Shout out. This cover is stunning.
Blackbird.
Yeah.
So
Blackbird
if
has
you
been
want to
doing the
win,
thing in terms of covers.
let's make it happen. I think they're Googling.
I mean, while we wait for the response, I really want us to talk a little bit about the ways in which you wrote love in this book. None of the stories have none of the characters have a perfect love story. You think of the relationship between Bupe's parents, which on the outside looks great, but once you start to see the nitty-gritty and how it affects their child, you realize that, okay. But also you think of how Maggie and Terrence navigates their relationship, or rather how Maggie navigates this romantic relationship, and you realize that her own childhood and her own childhood traumas have had a big impact on the ways in which she loves and is able to navigate love. And I really want us to talk a little bit about why you wrote love with such complexity. Like there was a lot going on there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you have some nice love stories, like her grandparents in Lagos, and you've got. I think Wupe's mom and dad really are like, they've been loving each other since forever. So, but you're like, no, I don't know. For me, I see them like, oh my gosh, these guys are so in love.
They're still in love, but like you said, what expense, right? Because what does that mean for Bupe? The ways in which they're so involved and like absorbed in this love, and it's like impenetrable. So there's just no space for this love to be expansive, to also include Bupe. And so much of why Bupe pursues the romantic relationships that she does is because she's chasing this ideal that her parents have set up, which may or may not be true.
Yeah.
Now, that's why I side-eyed them a little bit, like just a bit, just a little.
So I don't know. I think love is what it is. It just is complex in all of its forms. It's different things to different people, expressed in different ways. And I think the ones in this book are, you could call them a bit troubled, but I think they reflect what I see. They reflect what does exist in this world. So, it can't all be fairy tales and fluffy pillows and.
Terrence is still one of my faves, though. Terrence is one of my faves because I think that people often think that, like, the narrative around love is that you need to be perfect and you must do self-work and you must be this amazing perfect person before anybody else can love you, right? And you see this really troubled Maggie. You see this person has all of these childhood traumas and these issues, and you see how Terrence in many ways is just willing to come to the party and love her in the state that she is. And there's just something so beautiful about that in a world that offers a narrative that you need to be perfect before somebody can love you.
Yeah.
So Bibi has got the answer correctly. Bibi from YouTube, Grey Wolf Africa Prize. Yes, that's definitely it. So congratulations. We're just going to write our email address on here for you to email us your details so that we can get the book to you, Bibi. Congratulations.
Happy reading, BB.
I wanted to talk about the form of the book, because I think that it's often something that people miss, but I think the form of the book is really, really important in what I think you're trying to do. I think about even the writings that come out of Zambia, for instance, right? I think about Mubanga's book, and I think about Nomwali's book, and I think about the excavation of the women's voices and how in many ways it's the woman who tells her story. And I wanted to know if that was intentional on your part, that Bupe and Maggie would be protagonists who tell their truth in their own words, and how that was writing against often the canon that puts men first and wanting to rewrite women into Zambian history and into how they form part of the nation building. Because I think you also do that, although in third person with Gambara Margaret, but you write her into the liberation movement as well.
Yeah. Okay. And having said that, I did have a publisher who rejected it for being in first person. So I was like, no, this one, Maggie and Bupe are supposed to be in first person. I couldn't imagine it any other way. So the point of view in the story was a deliberate device. It was a deliberate device that Maggie and Bupe are speaking in the first person so that the reader has a more immersive experience with them and feels the frustration that they feel throughout the story as they're trying to uncover the family secrets, which it doesn't come easily. You keep going and going, and they have all these roadblocks that keep them from uniting their family. So writing the first person from Bupe and Maggie was very important, from writing from girls' perspective so that they could tell their story themselves. Well, grandmother's grandmother's story comes in the third person. And like I said earlier, that was to give the reader some kind of relief, let the reader sort of know what the girls don't know. But like you said, it was really important to write Grandma Margaret into history and also display the role that she played in the freedom struggle, because that generation that they come from, I came to learn, you have a lot of wives of freedom fighters, whereas not enough spotlight has been put on the work that, they call them wives, but really they were freedom fighters too. So I really wanted to demonstrate that through showing what Grandmother Margaret went through. Every sacrifice she made, every risk she took, every time her husband said, will you do this for your country? And she did. That is what is not in our canon. That is what is missing. And so if we can rewrite that through fiction, then that is what I was glad to do with Grandmother Margaret. And the girls also to represent our new power and our new possibilities for what we can do going forward. Yeah.
I love this.
So we have another question to ask for you to win the final book that we're giving away tonight. And it's a very simple question. The question is, Maggie has a mother. What is Maggie's mother's name? That's all you need to answer. Maggie's mother's name, what is it? And you will win.
Wow, 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 wow.
We've mentioned it. We've
I'm
given
so tempted to even add, who is Maggie's father? Wait, king.
And so while we wait for someone to answer, what do you hope readers such as these ones watching us can get from the book? So now that it's out of your hands, it's in the world, what do you hope it ignites or it achieves?
I hope that this book, if there's anyone out there who has ever asked the question, where am I from? What does it mean? And where am I from doesn't necessarily mean physically what country do I come from. It also means where am I from? What's my lineage? Who are my people? What's anyone who's ever sort of had to walk with that question and never had it answered? I hope they can find the courage to dig a little bit and just go in and be okay with everything that you are, I hope that for families, if there's a mirror that they need, they can look back and say, okay, the bigness of family, what it means to be together, what it means to forgive and be able to overcome and move on. I hope they can take that from it. So Yeah, and I hope it makes them want to come to Zambia too.
I want to go to Kinsale.
So if you
just
have a copy, you're not allowed to enter. So like, yeah, someone said Maggie's mom is Fabiola, and I laughed a little.
Isa is so kind. She says I won't be greedy because I already have a copy.
But I mean, wouldn't it be scandalous if Maggie's mom was Fabiola? Like, I'm just saying, like, it would be a little scandalous.
really interesting sequel, you know? Plot twist. Maybe that's why Stella's so mad at the world. That would be really cool. But yeah.
Maybe there's a mini Charles Jr. somewhere, courtesy of Fabiola.
Now that would have been a really nice plot twist. Thanks for that. Maybe we can try it on the next one.
I'm ready. I'm ready. You can just let us know when it's out, Ricky.
So we're just hoping. I mean, Natasha literally like offered the answer to you on a silver platter. That's what she did.
Multiple times.
Yeah, let's wait one more time. But what are you reading right now, Natasha? What's on your bedside table?
What am I reading? I'm reading. Okay, let's see. Let me find my titles quickly. Like I said, Confessions of Franny Langton. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Oh yes, Simole just got the answer.
Yeah, no, it's deep. It's really deep.
Stella, so Simole, please DM us or email us, and then we will get the book to you. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you, Simole. Like I just finished Transcendent Kingdom. Last Death of Vivek OG. I finished The Vanishing Half the month before. So I'm on Confessions of Franny Langton, and yeah, it's deep. It's nice. Sarah Collins did a great job with that. So yeah, I'm just amazed at how much stuff we've got to go through.
I'm amazed at how much books there are in the world. I'm just like, can I just lock myself up and read? That's all I want to do.
Yeah.
So someone's asking, is it too soon to ask what are you working on? Don't kill me, just asking.
Well. I've finished a draft of something. Now I just have to see if anyone likes it. So let's see how it goes. You what?
Tell us more about this draft.
No, I can't. I can only tell it's a love story set in Northern Rhodesia in the 50s.
Ooh,
just before
historical. I love historical fiction. Like, I just feel like there were like some scandalous things happening that we're yet to uncover. So I'm ready. I am ready.
But also
you know that our grannies were doing a lot and our grandfathers were doing a lot. So it's really exciting to see that stories. But I also like what Natasha said in the podcast about, like, you know, we don't often get to think of our grandparents as these individual entities who exist, who have stories, who have histories, and it's interesting to see that perspective of them. Like, what did love look like in the 50s?
True. I mean, also, we are really blessed all over Africa to have the archive that we have, because it's free content. It's yours. It's earned already. It exists. So I do believe if we can just go in and use it and reimagine with, create new worlds using what's already been left for us, I think we might just have an amazing canon in the years to come.
Yes, that I definitely agree with that. Before we let Natasha go, if you have any final questions, please write them up and then we'll ask Natasha. But Natasha, again, from the Cheeky Natives, we want to say this was delicious. And not only anything for me for the story, but also the writing. The writing was really enjoyable. The imagery was so vivid. There were just times when I was like, okay, come through with that sentence, right? And so I went back to be like, okay. And also just there was a lot of moving parts, but you tied them so nicely together. So really thank you for an absolutely amazing debut novel.
And I mean,
thank you.
Just to add to that, I think that the great thing about writing is just the ways in which writing expands your imagination. And I think that good books transport you to places. And this was one of those books where I felt that I was in Lusaka, I felt that I was in the UK, I felt that I was in Nigeria, and that you that so much of that also felt so authentic and so genuine, and that there were no tropes, but also that it was written for people who look like us, and that it was written by us and for us as well, which is really so important. And I really, really do appreciate just the ways in which reading has been able to transport us during lockdown. I mean, I was in Lusaka during lockdown 2020, courtesy of Nobi from here.
Thank you. You guys are gonna make me cry. I'm not supposed to cry on the show. Thank you so much.
No, please. James wants to know, when are you coming to Kenya? And a subsequent comment from James is that applies to the Cheeky Native host too.
I'm in Nairobi already, and I'm in your house. I'm in Kenya as soon as I can come, really.
James, we are ready for you to send our invitation letters, for a festival that you will host, and we will come there, because I absolutely love Nairobi. So I definitely will come back, and I love the conversations that we will have about literature. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, don't let my husband see this question about coming to Kenya, because he has this running joke about how before we met, or like a month or two before we met, he was meant to go to some, is it called Kilifi? It's like a festival, and he'd like planned this out in his mind. And then we met, and then he decided to get married, so he couldn't come to Kenya anymore. So don't let him see this, because he'll be like, yes, let's go to but I am super excited to go to Kenya. I cannot wait. So stay tuned, James.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you everyone for joining us on this wonderful edition of the Cheeky Natives live series. I love these live conversations, because I feel like we get to engage with audience, and we get to engage with the author, and everyone is just like, it just feels like a tea party, right? With like a nice, delicious storybook. So I love it. So thank you again, Natasha, for, Nobi from here, because it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful offering. And we cannot wait to read about this love story set in Northern Rhodesia in the 50s. We already are booking you for a discussion. That's what we're saying.
Oh man, you guys, thank you. You guys are amazing. You're beautiful, and keep doing the work you're doing. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Again, if you aren't following us, please follow us on all social media platforms. We are at Cheeky Natives. If you would like us to get you a copy of Natasha's book, please send us a DM or send us an email to say like you would like to get a copy. We know people, we can get you things, so we can definitely make it happen for you to get a copy. But if you want to get a copy directly, visit Blackbird Books, and you'll be able to get a copy from them. And also, stay tuned for our podcast. If you think like you've heard it all, like wait until you hear it all. And we'll see you again soon. So stay tuned to our social media to see who will be hosting next on our live sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming, everyone.